Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino, Aaron Zaretsky, and Michael Asiffo, and we're back here with our first roundtable under our rebrand of the game plan. Guys, hope you're doing well. In the city of Toronto, everybody's doing well because Toronto finally did something against the Bruins. We saw their big boys show up. Auston Matthews scored a goal. I'll start off with you, Aaron. What are your thoughts on what happened last night and just this series so far that we're seeing with the Leafs and Bruins?
Yeah, so far, game one did not go the Leafs' way. They just got dummied by Boston. And game two, Boston takes a 2-1 lead after the first period from a Pastrnak goal, 8 seconds left in the period. And it's like, I got the feeling of like, okay, here we go again, like kind of like deja vu of how the Leafs play against Boston because the Leafs couldn't beat Boston for the past 8 times they met each other. But yeah, I give credit to the whole team. I give credit to Samsonov, Tavares, and Matthews for really stepping up their game and getting the win. It was a gutsy win, and Matthews, he played one of his best games that I have seen, and it's just an incredible performance. And like he had this will, like this determination that he was not going to take a loss in that game. And and he gets the game-winning goal in the third period from an incredible pass from Max Domi, who also had a great game. And yeah, and now just hopefully, like if Matthews can continue to play the way he did in game two, of just the determination, the will, the hungriness to win, to not lose to Boston anymore, things will be really well for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And Mike, like we've seen this now, Toronto, Boston. Do you think what they're doing right now is putting them in a position where they can finally end this curse there?
I mean, when I look at Boston and the whole issues when it comes to Toronto, when it comes to Boston, is a lot of times, there are some good moments that we have against Boston. At least when you look at it in totality, there are some good moments. We do look good for certain amounts of the game. But the issue is always the game six, the game seven. Those important must-win games where, for whatever reason, something weird happens with Toronto, whether it be the infamous 4-1 collapse, that game six collapse that we had a couple of years back. So for me, this game one win is nice, but it's going to be about that must-win game for me when it comes to the Leafs. Because when you think big picture, it's never been about the Leafs in game two of the series. It's been about the Leafs in game seven.
I agree. Saw Matthews there, like what Aaron was talking about. That was a really good game that he played. Gets on the score sheet. If we're going in soccer terms, that's 70 goals in all competitions for Auston Matthews. So finally getting that number. And I think it's something where the goaltending also stood on its head. Samsonov comes in, bounces back from getting pretty much hung out to dry 5-1, and then they get the win there, makes big saves. So looking forward to seeing how this goes on. But I want to move on a little bit to another series that's catching a lot of people's eyes, especially in the States. Winnipeg is getting some love from Pat McAfee. Michael, what do you think of like a small market in Canada like Winnipeg finally getting this kind of recognition for their fan base?
You know what though? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Winnipeg has always been a group that, or like at least a franchise that inside of Winnipeg has gotten a lot of love. Like I remember the infamous Gary Bettman, the stadium has to be full, or like we're pulling it. Well, he didn't say it like that, but I'm paraphrasing. And that press conference when the city moved from Atlanta to Winnipeg, and the franchise, the fans have been loyal, win, lose, or draw. But it's now starting to bleed over where the team, they play hard. They always do play hard. And my recollection has always been that they always give 110%. They play a style of hockey, even the days of Dustin Byfuglien and those boys. They always had like a very weird kind of like mix of like offensive brilliance and grit. But now you're seeing it where it's like a lot of guys who are I would like to say 5-tool players almost in a way, where like they're guys who are responsible on one end and also can have a little bit of skill to them on the other end. So I think that's what's capturing the imagination of the American audience. But it's also just the whole passion around the city that's bleeding over as well.
And Aaron, like, this is something where, like, Winnipeg is in the headlines, like Michael mentioned, like in Winnipeg, beloved team. You don't really hear about them over the border in the United States. So now with Pat McAfee, looks like on board there, he's rocking the jersey, collaborating on IG posts with them. Like, do you think that they can finally become a team where they're starting to get more traction there, merchandise sales, and maybe international appeal in the States?
Yeah, like I can definitely see it happening, like with Pat McAfee having a national show in the US, that definitely helps, and him on his show saying that Winnipeg can win the Stanley Cup, and the place was rocking in Winnipeg, and like, yeah, it can only help the team, the Winnipeg Jets, get more exposure, gain more attention. And here they're playing Colorado, who won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. So Winnipeg can eliminate Colorado, then just, build the momentum to, and they have a really good team too. And, looking at the Western Conference, like it is open, like there hasn't really been a dominant team in the Western Conference. And by all accounts, with them having home ice, them feeding off the home crowd, they can definitely make a run in these Stanley Cup playoffs.
I agree. It's if they can knock off the former champs there, like Colorado only 2 years ago won it, so they still have that core there of elite players that helped them get there. So that would be a huge statement if they can get that done. But the final hockey topic I actually totally forgot about in recent weeks because it seems like the playoffs are overshadowing it a little bit. The relocation of Gary Bettman's favorite franchise, Arizona Coyotes, to Utah. And I don't know if you guys saw this press conference. He was throwing shots there at the Arizona Coyotes owner. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. They can obviously get a team back with all these expansion rules and they can be like the best team in the league. But for now, it's a sad day at the NHL office for Gary Bettman. I just want to get your thoughts. We'll first start with Michael. Like, they were playing in a university arena. The university didn't even want them there. God bless their franchise and the fan base that they have. Just didn't work. Like, do you think hockey in Arizona is a lost cause at this point?
I'll say it like this: if you want to bring it back, a lot of things have to change. A lot, like it has to be 30 for 30. The Baltimore Colts, the Baltimore Ravens, like. You know what I'm saying? It has to be kind of like that, where the group where people are just clamoring for it for 30 years, because this experiment with Arizona was an unmitigated disaster. And I don't know how you can call it anything but, honestly. You had a stadium that was in disrepair. You had to move from a high school stadium to a university stadium to your uncle's backyard. To wherever, and I'm not even trying to like be funny. Like I'm serious. Like it, there's this perception that compared to the Big Four, like compared to the other members of the Big Four sports organizations in North America, the NHL is small time, and the reason why is because of things like what was happening in Arizona, right? And I'm not saying move every team to Canada and have like the Nunavut Raiders or something. But what I am saying is that when you do have teams in America, you have to have teams that want it, and you have to have teams that have the capacity to make the franchise look professional. Because even in the MLS, They don't give teams. They don't give places teams if they don't know the teams can't handle it, right? And you see those stadiums; they're full, they're rocking, they're loud, right? And I'm not here going to say that definitely the MLS is bigger than the NHL at this point, but they're an example of people growing in the right direction, doing things the right way. Whereas when you saw what Gary Bettman was trying to do, and it's not all on the owner of Phoenix Coyotes, some of it was on Gary Bettman as well. When you see what they're trying to do in trying to build the game in America, which obviously is the most profitable nation in the world, you still have to make sure that you're putting it in places where you're putting it in a position to succeed. And I think Utah can be that place. I think Utah is very interesting as a state and a lot of the development that's going on. And I think that they're a place that will be ready for hockey from the outside looking in. But let's not make the same mistakes and market the right way, put them on the right time slots, put an effort towards growing the game, have the players go out places to market the game and make them personal, right? I don't care if you have to bring back PK Subban to be like the mascot of the team, but get some guys in there so you don't make the same mistake as Arizona. Sorry, that's a ramble. I am rambling a little bit, but it's because this thing of Arizona was such a joke to a league that deserves better and deserves more, and their players deserve it.
Yeah, and I agree because I even asked Mike Goldberg this. He was a Arizona resident. He told me about hockey in the desert, and he told me it was actually fine in the desert, what they were doing and building the highway, and then COVID happened. So I don't know what that has to do with the past of Arizona not succeeding, but I just don't think they got it right there. Gary Bettman should have took onus of the ownership groups that came in and left. And you look at Florida and that works. They go around the league. So I just don't know what he could have done with the ownership group unless they did what Vegas did and you have to have an expansion draft. So, Aaron, what do you think Arizona did wrong here in this whole process? And do you see them coming back into the league in a few years when expansion talks start ramping up?
Well, there's been talks before about them building a new arena in Tempe, Arizona, a brand new state-of-the-art facility, and that will attract fans. Maybe if they do build that arena, then maybe possibly they could bring a team back. But I don't know. It's just hockey in Arizona never seemed to be feasible. The Coyotes should have moved years ago. They should have really moved before having to play games in a college hockey arena, because for them to play not just one season, but 2 seasons of NHL hockey in Mullet Arena, it's a joke. It was a complete joke because NHL regular season games shouldn't have to be played in a college hockey arena, right? And yeah,
City. Do you guys remember when they had the? Do you guys remember when they had the drapes?
Oh yeah,
for the dressing. Go.
Yeah, and then last season too, right? They had to build NHL-sized locker rooms on the fly, and it was just a joke, And City of Glendale never wanted the Coyotes. Phoenix doesn't want them, and so it's they were stuck in no man's land. Okay, where can we go? Where can we go? And that is, they should have just moved years ago so that this whole situation doesn't even happen.
Yeah, when the university does we want a professional team, there's problems there, and it just goes far beyond the team and everything going on behind the scenes that we don't really know about. But that was an indicator when the university started coming out, and there was reports there that the team was overstaying their welcome. The writing was on the wall, I think, for Gary Bettman. He just didn't want to admit it. But we'll go on to a game in an arena here that was rocking and rolling, and that was the Denver Nuggets and LA Lakers. Jamal Murray, our Canadian guy, gets the game winner. And we saw them take care of the Lakers on the court, and we saw Nikola Jokic's brothers take care of fans in the stands. I'll start with you, Aaron, on this one. What are your thoughts on Jamal Murray's just progression into this star. The last couple of years he came back from injury, they win, and this year he's adapted to being this guy late in games to knock down a game winner.
Yeah, it's really remarkable to see how much he has grown as a player, and the whole journey of coming back from that bad injury to now being, for the last couple seasons now, he's been a superstar player, a go-to player for the Denver Nuggets. And yeah, his clutchness in a sense where he's able to get the ball late fourth quarter, wants to take the big shot, wants to take the game-winning shot, and not only takes it, but he makes it too against the Lakers, against LeBron and Anthony Davis and all of that, all those guys. Like, yeah, it was just a fun moment, nice moment to see also from a Canadian basketball standpoint, because Canada's one of, Canada's best players right now in the NBA. So it's, really happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, just when you see him with that confidence, getting that shot down, and the reaction from Anthony Davis afterwards of, like, he was a little bit petty. I don't blame him. It was a big moment that he was on the receiving end of. But we'll go to Michael here. Like, what do you think the Lakers have to do from just a team standpoint, and aside from LeBron, like, who do you think has to be the guy to step up here?
Yeah. So, I mean, my thing is with the Lakers and the Nuggets series, it always follows a pattern. And the pattern is this. The Lakers will be up by 10 or 12 to start. They look good in the first half. D'Angelo Russell looks good. Ron does something amazing. They really punch the Nuggets in the mouth. And then the Nuggets figure it out by third quarter. And all of a sudden, Jokic starts hitting these ridiculous over his head threes with 1 second left on the shot clock. Jamal Murray is all of a sudden the best player who's ever lived on this planet. Aaron Gordon is throwing down windmill dunks like he's in the slam dunk contest 10 years ago. And the Nuggets win by some absurd number at the end of it. In this case, it looks like it was just a game winner that got him. But there is clearly a what's the word I'm looking for? There's clearly a gap between the Lakers and the Nuggets whenever they play each other. That for now, the Lakers have not been able to close. There is still a lot of runway left on the track, and you don't want to count out LeBron James and Anthony Davis, especially when the thing is that the Lakers haven't necessarily played bad offensively in the first half, at least. And there are moments where it seems like they figured them out, but they just haven't been able to close. And you need to see some sort of closing power towards the end. So that's what I would say that needs to happen moving forward. But I think in terms of the game itself, it was a great game. It was a wonderful game, and I'm really happy for Jamal Murray because he's a dude who works about as hard as he could ever work, and just shows out in the playoffs all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And like, what do you think of like LeBron here, though? Like, do you think this is just like a matchup problem where if they were playing any other team, they could have probably been a favorite in that, but it's just because like Anthony Davis, the matchup with Jokic is more detrimental than just whether or not the team is performing offensively?
I think at some point Jokic is we have to start saying that he's probably the best player in the league. Like, not even probably, he definitely is the best player in the league. Does he have his faults that I think the media is very quick to look away from? Yeah, for sure. But he is such an offensive juggernaut, that he can shoot, he can pass, he can dribble, he can. He's got such a high basketball IQ, and he jumps about 40 inches up in the air, which is insane to me. How you can be so unathletic yet so good at basketball, but he just understands basketball at such a conceptual level that I don't know how LeBron 39 years old, about to turn 40 very, very soon, is going to be able to deal with that. Even if LeBron was 24 years old, it's not like LeBron can grow 7 inches taller and deal with Jokic, right? It's just, unfortunately, you're dealing with a player who's better than him at this point of his career, who's playing a different position, and there's nothing LeBron can do besides maybe every once in a while be part of the double team, right? There's more, I'm being facetious, there are more basketball things you can do to take Jokic out of the equation, but just like in general, like what do you do when the player who's not even the player you're guarding is doing all kinds of ridiculous things?
It's one of those things where the matchup comes into it, and like we're seeing it there with LeBron, what he could do, like, which is still great for his age. But Aaron, what do you think, like, the matchup here between Jokic and Davis? Like, is there something Davis maybe could do? Like, he has been pretty well this season from an injury standpoint. He's been relatively healthy, which is a miracle by how many games he's missed in the past. But like, do you think he is at a point where he can stop Jokic now?
Well, like with Nikola Jokic, I think it's just more so like trying to contain him, like because you can't like stop him completely. It's just more so like limiting, like how many points he can get, limiting his rebounds. But I don't know, like with Davis, it's just maybe more so like trying to have Davis on the floor when Jokic isn't on the floor to try and get an advantage, possibly that way. But yeah, the Lakers is just, I don't know, it's just not a good matchup, as you guys said earlier. And just, and like LeBron too, like him, I just found it funny, like him complaining about the officiating, when most of the time the refs are kind of in his favor. And then when a call or two calls don't go his way, he starts to complain, which isn't a good look, for him or the Lakers. But who knows? Maybe they can, with game 3 and 4 being in Los Angeles, maybe they can find a way to even up the series.
Speaking of slam dunks from the court, we'll go slam dunks to another area. UFC, Dana White did a slam dunk on the media, it seemed like, by putting a compilation video of content creators, journalists bashing UFC 300. Michael, first, like, I'll start with you. Like, did you see the video, and what are your thoughts on Dana White going off on the media for this?
Yeah. I mean, look, Dana, the media, you know how it is. You know what this is about, and it is what it is. Here's what I will say. I think when you get into sports journalism, one of the hard lessons you learn as a sports media or as a person in sports media is, well, two hard lessons. One, a lot of times when you're going for your media credentials for basketball, like the NBA, the NHL, whatever, and even the UFC, you're not necessarily there as a true journalist trying to get the scoop. A lot of times they want you to be PR. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're not there as necessarily a journalist, but there as a content creator in journalist form, right? You're there to you're there in some ways to make the players look good, right? Now, to varying degrees, there's going to be companies that will allow you to talk about the players in negative ways to varying degrees. But for the most part, you're going to be there to get the word out for the team and market the team, right? And sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's just going to be in negative ways, and they're okay with that. The UFC is a company that is unfortunately on that extreme other end of the spectrum where they will not let any negative things be said about them, and especially not of Dana White. So that's number one, right? And number two, and the other hard lesson that you have to learn is that if you do not follow that, unfortunately, unlike, let's say, covering like a politician or whatever, who, you're protected by the First Amendment if you're in America and Charter of Rights and Freedoms if you're in Canada, to look deeper into a into a politician's past or whatever and get the scoop. The UFC can just revoke your credentials, right? And because you're talking about something that isn't pertaining to the actual organization you're trying to cover, they have all the power to make you look good or bad, right? So no matter how much Ariel Helwani can talk about Dana White beating his wife, right? Which, whatever, like I'm not going to get into that. Or UFC 300 and being a card, and no matter how much out of context you think it was or wasn't, whatever, at the end of the day, no matter how many times you slice it, the UFC has the power when it comes to making you as a media personality look good or bad. And that's why I want to be very careful in the way I say this, because I don't want to crap all over people who I think legitimately do a good job, like Brett Okamoto, Bronstetter, who, because Aaron Bronstetter has paid his dues and has worked decades in this industry. It's coming up upon, like, I think 3 at this point, from starting as a producer on Tim and Sid Uncut to now, being one of the more reliable journalists in UFC, to now doing commentary on cards for Canadian MMA, and it's appreciated. And, never mind him, but even people like Nia Danielle Marie, who, are, upstarts, I guess, in comparison, but are doing really legitimately good work. But, they also aren't necessarily the hard-hitting journalists that you'd like to see, or like, I guess, your Walter Cronkite types or your Dan Rather types, like, let's say, an Ariel Helwani or a Petey Carroll, right? Or even a Luke Thomas, right? And so as a result, you are seeing those guys be ostracized on the way out and be slammed on in the media in that piece by Dana White, as opposed to the guys he didn't mention, and and you can see clearly where it is, right? And it's sad, because I think there is a place to give criticism, reasonable criticism of UFC, without making it look like you're an evil spawn of Satan that Dana White likes to paint you as. But at the same time, do I think that sometimes the media can be a little ridiculous in their criticism? And do I think Ariel Helwani sometimes does look like he has a vendetta against Dana White? Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird. Like, I'm conflicted. I guess it's a long-winded way for me to say I'm conflicted in all this conversation.
Yeah, you nailed it there. Like, obviously, he's had different relationships with some media members and others. Like, the Ariel Helwani one's well documented. Like, all the interviews he's done with him, like, throughout the years too. So it's understandable how he goes one direction with one that he feels slighted by compared to the others. But if Dana White's looking for some content for the future ones, I want to give him some positive ones here. I thought UFC 300 was amazing, lived up to the hype. The card, you start off with Cody Garbrandt versus Davidson Figueiredo. Can't go wrong there. The ending, Alex Pereira doing what he did to Jamal Hill, how he just, casually told Herb Dean, get out of my face, I'm about to finish this guy. And Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, what they did, incredible. I think fans kind of get a gauge of what's going on in the UFC at the big event, but kind of miss out on some of the other ones from the fan experience. And Aaron's a perfect example here. He was at UFC 297 in Toronto, got to see the atmosphere. What did you think of what the UFC did that week in Toronto from the weigh-in show and UFC 297 and just the overall feedback from the event?
Yeah, I thought they did a great job, and it was like such a long night too. In terms of the crowd was into it more so in the co-main event and the main event. Like, they were really excited, but it was also like a long night too, like a very long night, a lot of fights. But yeah, it was a busy night for sure. And, the crowd was maybe not so engaged in the first couple of fights, but towards the end, like the main event, the co-main event, both going the distance, incredible fights. Yeah, it was a fun night for sure.
That's great. And hopefully, like Toronto, like Dana White did say, he's coming back here and he owes Toronto a better card. So if you got Strickland for the last one, can only imagine what he's cooking up for the next time they come to Toronto. But Michael, in terms of like the UFC, like big fights that they can make, Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor's coming up. Is there like another big fight that you think needs to happen this year in the UFC?
Let me go off the board here and say I would really like to see an Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I would really like to see. I think Max Holloway, by knocking out Justin Gaethje with 1 second left, has really opened himself up to a lot of interesting fights that can really take place here moving forward. Specifically, the Makhachev fight is on the table for him, and the Topuria fight is on the table for him. But there's a couple others. I think a rematch with Dustin Poirier could do really well. I think, there are other fights in featherweight for some guys on the come up that could do really well. Like a Sterling fight, for example, I think would be really interesting. And, I think moving forward, I'd like to see Max Holloway get another crack to cement his legacy by facing Ilia Topuria, because Ilia Topuria is the guy who knocks everyone out, and Max Holloway, statistically, is a dude who has never been knocked out. Statistically,
that's crazy.
Right? Because I think the Justin Gaethje punch did knock him down, but that's just me. That's just me. The stats say what the stats say, and it is what it is. So, in terms of fights, I think Max Holloway is the dude. I know everyone's gonna say, let's get Pereira and Aspinall. I've heard a lot of Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. I've heard a lot of people talk about Israel Adesanya and Dracus Duplessis. I've heard a lot of those, but Max Holloway, maybe it's recency bias, but I think Max Holloway and his 2 fights right now are the most bankable fights you can do at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And even the talk there, like Dana White talking about Santiago Bernabeu Stadium from that reporter, and he said he didn't shut it down. Like he usually shuts down the stadium idea. He doesn't really like the stadium shows, but that'd be hard to pass up. You have Ilia Topuria, and then the recency of like Max Holloway, what he did, like that's a stadium. I think you can pack that out and have him at Santiago Bernabeu. But like, Aaron, do you think from a standpoint of being in the arena, like that atmosphere, we've been to wrestling shows too there, like is the atmosphere better in the arena, you think, or do you think Rogers Center, like a stadium anywhere else, like is there a difference between the two that you've noticed?
Yeah, like I would say it's better inside the Scotiabank Arena, like a smaller arena. The sound quality is much more better, and the crowd noise too is much louder. Because like I kind of notice it too, like with concerts, like at Scotiabank, it's much better. While at Rogers Center concert, the sound quality isn't as good, even though there's more people. It's not really the same. So for like UFC or wrestling events, the inside an arena is I find it to be like just a better too. Like working it or even as a fan watching it, it's overall a better experience.
Great. And just before we wrap up here, I want to give our viewers here and listeners, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, some more info about the game plan. You can follow us on the description in our bio here, millions.co. Head over there, see all the content that's there, all the content that's coming up, stay up to date with everything. And there's some merch up there, our YouTube channel. If you're watching on Millions, head over to our YouTube channel. The description will be there. And you can see some of the past interviews that we've all done, some of the roundtables we've done, some of the athletes even that are Millions that have even been a guest in the past, like Tabitha Ricci's been on there, Kyle Nelson, and a number of others. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was fun. Roundtable, we talked about the Leafs and Bruins. We talked about NBA and we talked about some UFC. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch up next time.